And we are live.
Take it away, Joe.
Hey, I get to be your MC tonight. So I'll apologize now, and we'll see where we end up. But yeah, I just wanted to. I'm honored to be here tonight, like I am every week with you guys, and just wanted to start us off with a prayer and then kick us off. So, Creator, I just thank you for this day, and thank you for bringing us together. And wherever and however we've been today, I ask that you clear our minds, clear our hearts, prepare ourselves to look into this good medicine that we gather together to partake in. So just pray these things in your Son's name, amen. So I just wanted to welcome everyone that's live to Good Medicine Way, and everyone in YouTube land who gets to watch this later on. Hi, hope you're having a good day as well. And I am not in Albuquerque, so I want to acknowledge the land that I'm on and the people of this land. I'm on the land of the Gabrielino Tongva, which is in southern Los Angeles, and the Gabrielino Mission Indians is their other name, and they're an unrecognized tribe by the federal government, and I live and work and play on the land that our Creator created for them to be on. And so that's where I'm from. I know we're kind of from all over the place, so yeah, in that way, I wanted to, or I'll do the 4 directions prayer to continue us on our way today. So Creator, I just again lift up our time to you. We look to the east, to the beginning of our day, to the end of the night, and we lift our hands to you in a good way. We want to meet you in that way, and we look to the south for the warm breeze, the comfort that you bring into our lives. Look to the west, where the setting sun ends our day and brings quiet to the world. And we look to the north, to your strength, to your direction, to your strength in our life. And we just pray these things, and Creator sets free His power. Amen.
My turn with the incarnations.
Insight. And I'm gonna throw in the Listen Project too. So 2 weeks ago, it was Native InterVarsity's Listen Project, and I invited Dr. Randy Woodley and Terry Waldman to be guest speakers there. And it actually went really well because the theme of it was how did the land like impact the faith, your faith in your story. So it kind of brought about like different ideas and thoughts from these two because they never really thought, how the land can shape their faith and shape what they know and see who to be creator to be. And it was a small crowd, but it was a good crowd. So I was very grateful for all the people that took time out of their schedule to be there with us. It was a really good weekend. So if you all prayed for us, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have been praying for us, thanks. It was really it was really definitely a good weekend, especially for all of the people that were involved. Like they gave me good feedback. Like they really enjoyed what the content was, and that was my first Listen project. So of me co-leading with Cedric Platero. Who often doesn't come, but he's definitely a person who can bring his gifts to Good Medicine Way in some way too. So just keep him in your prayers too, because I know he lost his grandmother to COVID about a year ago, but he's still dealing with it pretty hard. And so just appreciate prayers for that. And so the other part too of that was just understanding that what creator's doing with the land too, because I know I shared like a lot of the times like the droughts and how like there's no water here in the Southwest, and how the cedar trees and the pine trees are doing. And I just realized something. I was like, I just allowed myself to see and be like, okay, this is something that creation is doing, but is it trying to tell me something, or am I trying to read too much into it, or should I just keep praying? And so I kept praying and praying, and finally I just felt this wave of like wait, cedar and pine trees are medicine. They're medicine to my people. So it's like they're sacrificing their medicine for what they know they can do. So it was a pretty interesting thought about how creation can do that to itself too. Not only that, adapt to all of the things that are happening and going on here. Yeah, so that's my creation insight, just like how well people and the animals can adapt to what's the environment, because this was never really a desert to begin with in the beginning. So, and that's all for me.
All righty. And now for Namar and his Native America and Juneteenth.
Good evening, everyone. How y'all doing? All right. If I haven't told you all already, happy Father's Day for yesterday. Happy belated Father's Day. Much love to you all. All right. Hope you all had a good day yesterday. All right. So now, as you all may be aware, this weekend, today is the celebration of the newly federal holiday, Juneteenth. Although it's a federal holiday, there are still some states in America that don't celebrate it as a legal holiday, even though they give some of their workers the day off. So let's talk about Juneteenth for a moment. Now, in 1852, the abolitionist Frederick Douglass, he posed a question to an audience who gathered to listen to him during the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And he says this, he says, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July?" I answer, "A day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn." So imagine Juneteenth as a celebration, as a reaction to that. Juneteenth fulfills that question. Now, Juneteenth celebrates the abolition of slavery taking place on June 19th, 1865. Now, mind you, although President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation was issued 2 years prior to that, happening in 1863, there was still the Civil War taking place, and there was much resistance from the Confederate southern states. And that the order for the end of slavery to arrive in Texas with military backing to enforce it, that wouldn't take place until 1865. The announcement, the first Juneteenth, to bring that into fruition. So now, with that being said, how does that relate, the Juneteenth, the slavery of African Americans, how does that relate or overlap with Native Americans? So let's get into that. The struggles of Blacks and Native Americans, it is very, very connected. As we know, Native peoples were genocidally disappeared and replaced by the white settlers and landowners, who then used Africans to be enslaved to produce their land. Now, the Native peoples, they endured and they survived, and they've been able to move forward. In Galveston, Texas, the 250,000 enslaved people who were freed on Juneteenth were African, Native American, and Black Native American, Black Indians. Over the course of these 200 years, an estimated 2 to 4 million Native Americans were absorbed into this same system of slavery, which brought 10 million Africans to the Americans. There was the Cree, and I'm going to say these, I'm not going to pronounce these names correctly, but there was the Cree, there was Asine Bayone, the Masoni men who worked as the agricultural laborers in Montreal, because it goes up to Canada too. The enslaved Plains Apaches who worked the sugar canes, and that was taking place in the Martinique. They all locked into the chattel slavery, which engrossed many different cultures, both Black and natives, which led to the fate of millions of indigenous peoples, not only across America, but across 3 other continents. So now, with that being said, we know that America is built on a genocide of indigenous peoples and the enslavement labor of our Africans. So then, when we consider this history, we consider this. Not only is this a celebration for the abolishing of slavery, thanks to the 13th Amendment, for the freed African Americans, but this is also the freeing of enslavement to Native Americans and Black Indians alike. Now, here's another important factor to remember. There were many Native tribes, well, maybe I shouldn't say many, but there were some Native tribes that enslaved Africans as well. We know that there was the Blackfoot who enslaved Africans, and they were notoriously known for skinning Black slaves alive. There was the Cherokees that enslaved. There was the Wyandots that enslaved. Although normally those who enslaved the Africans usually did not practice the same chattel slavery that Africans had experienced from the white slave masters. Now, celebrating Juneteenth in Texas is a day when the Union General Gordon Granger declared slaves to be freed, not our celebration really, but because our people have freed themselves. That is the thought of many of the Black Seminole ancestors. The Black Seminole ancestors were known as the Negros Mascagos in Mexico, because Negro means black in Spanish. The Black Seminole leaders, one very important Black Indian Seminole leader that I would encourage you to learn about is John Horse, who's also a Catholic. They found freedom more than a decade before the Emancipation Proclamation. This was before the Union General Granger had enforced it upon Texas on June 19th, 1865. So there are some Native folks, I say that because there are some Native folks, especially the Black Seminoles, and even some of the Seminoles otherwise, that do not consider this a celebration for them, even if they are indeed of African descent, because they're looking at themselves from their Native culture perspective, saying, well, hey, we freed ourselves before the Emancipation Proclamation even happened. So that's something about the Black Seminoles. So in conclusion, that's just to give just some perspective and some insight of how Blacks and Natives were connected and are connected in this historical momentous event of Juneteenth.
Thank you. Are we live?
Yes.
Thank you once again for this good education in all things African American, Native American, and overlapping. All right, we got some songs here.
That's my research. That's my passion.
Yeah. All right. Got a couple songs here we're going to do. So we're going to do the Lift You Up round dance. And then we're going to do the Good Medicine Way song that Danny Zacharias wrote for us that we played the video of last week. And but we're going to be doing it live. So let me get everything set up here.
What's that called again? Spacing out. How does it look? Sorry, I've got two different songs in my head right now. Whoa.
Nice job, Rovers. Love the song. And thank you, Zachariah, Danny. Um, so announcements first. I was just about to read the word. I'm getting caught up with myself and getting excited because there's something I kind of want to share with you guys. But anyway, announcements. Um, we are asking for we've been and always asking for funding and announcements and offering. So if you want to offer, go to our Facebook page right there on top and somewhere. You can find our PayPal link. So we love all your offerings and the people who have been donating. And thank you, and yeah, we love what you're doing. And thank you, Dave, for putting in file. We have women's ministry on Wednesday. Heather, would you like to talk about it?
Yeah, Wednesday is Women's Circle at 7 p.m. Mountain. Anyone is welcome to join for the ladies and just to yeah, and all the ladies are welcome to join us at the Women's Circle on Wednesdays at 7 Mountain. So, and we're still in the book of Hebrew. So, and we're there, and yeah, so it's a nice group. It's a safe group, but we're just there waiting and see who shows up, and any new people show up. We always have a good time. And we always come together and have I think spiritual connection. I think just having that is pretty good. And so I'm thankful for that. So yeah, that's the Women's Circle right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. That reminds me of a quick funny joke and a friend of mine has reminded me of. Okay, why doesn't the woman ever brews coffee? Because he brews. It's from a woman, so I love how she phrased it too. Again, we have a Watoni Camp Powwow coming up at the end of July. Hope to see some of you guys there. And now for the word. We are in Ephesians 3, 7 through 10. And the thing I want to share about is like when I'm looking at reading it from the First Nations version, on top it says, small men to the sacred family village in desire. Just like, what is Ephesians? It means so interesting how the village there are the village of desire. Chosen to tell the good story. The gift of the Creator was a kindness came to me in a powerful way and created in me a desire to serve his good story. Even though I am small and weak among his holy people, he still chose me to tell all nations about the mysterious treasures he has hidden in the chosen one, and about the unfolding of the ancient plan. A great mystery that was hidden far away for many ages in Creator's heart. So that now, through his sacred family, his great wisdom, which is like a rainbow with many colors, will be made known to the power and the rulers in the spirit world above. The word of the Lord. And Leah, back to you.
All right. All right. Well, gonna briefly introduce our speaker tonight, Sue Martell. She and her husband Ray have been the editors of a couple of Richard Twiss's books and one of Casey Church's books. But she's going to tell you the story of how she got called into Native ministry. We've all been called to come together on this night at this time in our different places by such a bunch of different roads. It's so interesting to hear people's stories. So Sue Martell, handing it over to you.
First of all, Leah, can you hear me well enough, or do I need to move the microphone closer? We're good? Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Sue Martell. My husband Ray and I live on an island north of Seattle in Washington State. And I would like to acknowledge the fact that this is the land of the Coast Salish people. On our island, mainly the Samish, Swinomish, and Lummi inhabited our island, some of them full-time, some of them part-time. Ray and I, as Leah said, are authors and editors. The book that we wrote is called Dreamcatching. We started out our editing process by editing Richard Twiss's Rescuing the Gospel from the Cowboys, and then Casey's dissertation and his book, and there have been others as well. Both Ray and I are United States Air Force veterans, and that's how we met. I'm a retired, I do many things, but I was an RN for many years and the nurse manager of a pro-life Christian pregnancy care clinic on our island for 13. Ray works in the library system and has experienced quite a bit in media, writing, editing, newspaper, writing, all kinds of stuff. Both of us have been volunteers in ministry to natives with, first of all, Wachoni International, and then with NATES, which is now called the Indigenous Learning Community since 2009, 2010. Well, all of us are called in different ways, as Leah said. And as the scripture in Ephesians said, Paul said that he was called unexpectedly in a great vision to take the story in a powerful way. I think in every way that's true of all of us, just in a different way that the Creator has contacted each of us. Last week, Casey spoke about how he was called into ministry with natives in a contextual way, in a vision. And I say that more often than not, when Creator speaks to me, he speaks to me through dreams and visions. That hasn't been really accelerated until our call into native ministry. So I keep also thinking about Brian Brightcloud telling Namar, just tell your story. So that is going to be my goal. Ray and I were in the Air Force, as I said, and in 1995, we landed back here on Whidbey Island, but we had gone on a cruise to Alaska first after Ray and he got out of the Air Force, and I became a full-time mom for quite a while. So when we went to Sitka on the cruise, or when we went to Alaska on the cruise, one of the ports were used on the stop that we wanted to go to specifically was Sitka, which is a small town on Baranof Island. Really picturesque, just absolutely gorgeous. When we got to shore, we decided to go on one of those bus tours that people do when they go on excursions. I suppose there were probably 30 of us on the bus. And one of the particular places I wanted to go to was St. Michael the Archangel Russian Orthodox Cathedral, which is still a functioning church with a congregation of mostly Native Alaskans and usually a Native priest in Sitka. So I am also a watercolor artist and have been practiced professionally that way for about 10 years also. And I had heard that the artwork in St. Michael the Archangel Church was just stunning because it was done originally, the icons were painted by Russian iconographers, some of them in the 1700s, and they're famous. So I really wanted to see that. That was one of the reasons we went. So the bus pulled up at the church and we all filed in, and there was an Alaska Native man at the back of the church in, the brown robe and the rope around his waist. And he introduced himself as being a brother in the Russian Orthodox Church, and that he was Tlingit by tribal background. He told us a little bit about the history of the church, but then he asked us if we thought it would be nice if he were to offer to say the Lord's Prayer in his own language. And we thought that would be pretty cool. So we all said yes. Well, I would suggest that when he did that, we all bowed our heads respectful, and he did. It was like the cloud of the glory of God entered the building. The presence of God was almost tangible. And if any of you have had a mountaintop experience, you know what I'm talking about. It was like that. I don't know if anyone else saw what I saw, but there we are. Now, I was raised a United Presbyterian, and Ray was a cradle Catholic, but we attended evangelical churches and Presbyterian and so on after our marriage. But when I can speak for myself, when I was in the Air Force, I walked far away from my faith. And because of that choice in my life, I was not in a very good place. And we were questioning where we should land, where we should get jobs after leaving the Air Force and so on. It was a time of intense transition for us. Anyway, the next thing this gentleman did, this Tlingit brother in the Russian Orthodox Church, started to give us a history of all of the iconography. And he said that the one in particular called Our Lady of Sitka, which is a Madonna and Child icon, was known for miraculous intervention, namely physical healings. It was either eyes or ears, I don't really remember. Well, I thought that was intriguing, but we all filed around and we were looking at the different icons. And I stood looking at this particular one, which has its own chapel because it's considered special. And it was just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And I still could sense the presence of the Lord in that place. And I felt led to just, in my, in the difficulties of the turmoil I was in right then in my faith, I couldn't say a prayer to Mary. I was a United Presbyterian, but I put my head down and I did say, "Dear Lord, help my family and help me to be the best wife and mother I can be." And when I raised my head up, my United Presbyterian self was shocked to see Mary standing in front of me. Absolutely shocked. It was not something I expected or was looking for by any means. She was beautiful. She was a petite woman. I wouldn't guess much more than 5 feet tall. She was standing right in front of me. She looked very Middle Eastern with dark hair, dark complexion, and very dark eyes. She was wearing a blue veil that came down, I'd say pretty much to her mid-thigh. And she was standing close enough to me that I could see that she was wearing a khaki colored homespun dress with a kind of a rope around it. I didn't hear her say anything out loud to me, but I could hear that she was thinking what she was thinking. And all she said was, "Everything is going to be all right." I couldn't take my eyes off her. She was so beautiful. Next thing I know, Ray is shaking me by the shoulder saying, "The bus is leaving." So we had to hustle on out of there. Now, this was 1995. And obviously I told Ray what had happened. And I told my mom and his mom, whom I trusted, and one other person who asked me a direct question. And I didn't talk about it again for 12 years because it just didn't work for me from my background. Well, I will say that was a turning point back to faith. So that was when I started to go back to church. Ray came with me, and that's how we raised our children. But in 2007, not long before that, Ray's dad had passed on, and he was a merchant marine in World War II, a ship's engineer, and had always wanted to take the grandkids on a cruise to Alaska for fun. But he was too elderly and too sick, and he passed on before he could do that. So in his memory, after his passing, Ray's mom offered to use his life insurance policy money to take the whole family on the cruise to Alaska and a couple of friends. There were 21 of us. She is a very generous woman. She too was quite elderly. So we went, same cruise actually, same stops and everything. And Ray's mom wanted to go on the same tour bus excursion that we had been on in 1995. And of course we went with her because she was mom and she was elderly. Well, I was more than a little nervous about going back to that church. I wasn't real sure what was going to happen this time. So anyway, so we walked in, filed in just like we did before, but there was no Tlingit brother there this time. We were just pretty much on our own, except that the priest who was currently in charge of that parish was standing in the back, and there was a long line of tourists asking him a question. And he is a native man, an Alaska native. So you know how sometimes the still small voice of God is loud? Well, it was one of those times. And I could hear the Holy Spirit just nagging me. Go tell him what your story is. Go tell him your story. Go tell him your story. I argued for a long time. I did not want to do it because I thought he would think I was crazy because I wasn't real sure myself about the whole experience. So I pulled if you know what Gideon did, with the fleece and all that, testing God, I turned my back on the priest. And I said, "Okay, God, if when I turn around, there's nobody there, I'll go over and tell him." But I knew there was a long line. You know, when I turned around, there was nobody there. Of course. So I said, okay, you win. And I went over and told him, because I knew I'd probably never see the man again anyway. So who cares if he thinks I'm crazy? So I went over and told him what I just told you all. And he just stood there for a minute thinking, and he looked at me, and there was more to the conversation than I'll go into, but he indicated that he believed me, and that for the past 3 months or so, whenever he'd been at his prayer time during the day, the Lord had said to him that someone would be coming, and that he was to give his last blessed icon that had been blessed by the Archbishop to this person, whoever that was. And he told me there were a few other people who had come here and there, and he thought they might be the right one, and Holy Spirit said no. He looked at me and he said, it's you. So he said, you can't leave until I go up and get the icon from the church altar. Stay here. So I waited while he went up and did that, and came back with it and said, here, this is for you. And he said, I want your contact information, because we keep track of when such miraculous events happen here. So he's got our contact information and so on. And Ray saw all of this, he was there. So then at this point, we had actually made the bus tour late for the next stop. So we had to hustle back to the bus and then eventually come back home. So what do you do with that as a Protestant Presbyterian? Clearly God is trying to tell us something, but what? So I'd say for 2 weeks after that, and that was September of 2007, for 2 weeks, Ray and I spent time in prayer seeking what the Lord was trying to tell us. And we knew that the church was a native church, native congregation, native priest. Could it be possible that the Lord might be leading us into some sort of service to native people in ministry? So that was what we were praying about. And we were beginning to be suspicious that that might be it, but that was not, except for probably a few strands of DNA apiece from years ago, that was not our background at all. And we knew nothing about native people, quite honestly, except John Wayne movies. Okay. So what can I say? So I was sitting here on this very same couch. Ray was at work 2 weeks later, and I was praying about it. And I said, God, if you want us to serve native people, put good books in front of us. We have no idea what we're doing or where we should start learning. And then after I was finished with my prayer time, I turned on the television and I was channel surfing. Next thing you know, I see this, it's on TBN. I see this large native man with very dark, long hair being interviewed about a book he had written called One Church, Many Tribes. It was Richard Twist. Now, what are the odds that immediately after finishing that prayer and turning on the television, there's a man holding his book up saying, and I didn't even know native pastors existed, let alone Richard. Well, that was the end of the video. We missed the interview, but we saw the book. So Ray worked in the library system. So I called him after watching this clip and said, by any chance, is this book in our library system? It was, and Ray brought it home with him. So we clearly knew that was God, obviously. And so we read One Church, Many Tribes as the very first step into native contextual ministry. Well, where do you go from there? Well, Ray's an English major. What do? You open to the footnotes and you read all the books that Richard cited. So we read books by Randy Woodley, by Richard, by a variety of people whose names you would recognize. And that's how we started our education, in addition to Ray bringing, cultural, secular books home from the library, like, Black Elk Speaks, those kinds of things. And about, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, any number of different kinds of things. So we educated ourselves for a year, but we thought until God gives us further direction, we'll take the step of diving into local native culture here where we live. And so we started going to powwows and festivals, those kind of things. Being veterans, any veteran is welcome to march during the grand entry. So we would do that. And that is how we initiated quite a few relationships and very good friendships that we have till today. So that happened for about a year. Then the next part of this, it's miraculous the whole way through our story. It just is. In October of 2008, Ray's healthy, he's fine, but he had to have some surgeries to correct a health problem that is now just fine. but they were lengthy surgeries. And I went to the first one for 4.5 hours, and the girlfriend who was supposed to come with me to the follow-up one was sick. So I called a lady from our church that I'd only just met, and we just kind of connected and thought, well, we'd like to have coffee. I think we're going to hit it off. But the night before, not knowing this woman from Adam, except that we decided to have coffee, I called her and said, is there any way, I'll call her June, that you can come and have coffee, and we'll wait. You can hang out with me while Ray has this lengthy surgery. I don't really want to be myself. She said, sure, I've been wanting to get to know you better anyway. So next thing you know, June and I are sitting there for 4.5 hours while Ray's having his procedure taken care of. Well, the church we were going to at the time was not open to anything supernatural. They were good Christian folks and I love them, but that was the truth. And I heard that still small voice loudly again saying, tell her your story. And I said, but I don't know how she's going to react because of the denominational belief tradition. The Lord said, do it anyway. So I did. And this is the rest of the incredible part of it. She said that her good friend, Lisa, who was a professor at Asbury Seminary in Kentucky, was her best friend. And they'd grown up together in Seattle, and her friend Lisa would come to visit her every 6 months or so. She said, Lisa's specialty is Native American ministry. And I think that we should all get together for lunch when she comes up here next, because I think you'd enjoy each other's company. And I said, I think that guy, Richard Twist, said that he was going to Asbury. And so we looked it up there was a computer in the patient waiting room. I looked it up, Wachoni, and sure enough, it said Richard was going to Asbury. So she said, okay, well, Ray was finished with the surgery then. That was the end of the conversation, and we all went home. The next January, which was only a few months down the road, and in 2009, I was at work at the clinic. But the night before, I had seen a clip on TBN saying that Richard was going to be interviewed again, and I thought my friend June might like to see it too. So I called her during my lunch hour at the clinic, and I said, hey, this guy, Richard Twist, is going to be interviewed again on TBN. You might want to take a look at it. And she said, you're not going to believe this, but I just got a call from my friend Lisa, and she said that Richard Twist is her student, and in fact, she's on his doctoral committee. From Seattle, Whidbey Island to Kentucky, and back to Vancouver, Washington, where Richard was. If you can't see God in this, I sure do. Anyway, so she said, my friend Lisa said to tell you, and now this woman doesn't know me at all, right? And she says to tell Sue that she and Ray are supposed to go to Mission Connection Northwest next week I don't remember whether it was Portland or Vancouver, Washington, one of the two. And Richard is going to be one of the speakers next week, and you tell him that his professor sent you. And she said, then you should also tell your friend Sue that she and her husband are supposed to volunteer to be volunteers at their Wachoni staff conference in Seattle in March the following month. Now this woman doesn't know me, but she's telling me this is what we're supposed to do. Well, Ray had lost a lot of time at work because of his medical procedures. And when I called him and said, can we do that? He said, I don't think we can fit that into our budget because of all the time we've had off. Plus, try to be a nurse and get a time off at the clinic the following week, right? Well, it was a ministry I worked in. And one of my coworkers was kind of overhearing everything that was going on. And she said, Sue, I think we should pray about this. I think you're supposed to be there next week. So we prayed about it. My boss offered very kindly to rearrange my schedule so we could be there. But I thought, oh, we still can't, we still can't put that in the budget. So when I got home, Ray said to me, you're not going to believe what happened. And I said, what's that? And he said, all of my coworkers at the library gave me their extra work hours, and now we can afford it. 2 hours later. And I got the time off. So I know the whole thing's just, it boggles me to this day. So 2 weeks later, the next week, we were at Mission Connection, 15,000 people strong, went to the Native track, listened to Richard speak. We went up and introduced ourselves. He signed the One Church, Many Tribes books. And after all of the bells and whistles and supernatural stuff, that was it. And I thought, okay. And so we went back to our room because it's a considerable drive after we went out to dinner because it happened to be my birthday. And then we got back late that night at the motel. and we checked voicemail messages on our phone. And there was one from June saying, Sue, call me right away, it's urgent. Well, it was 11 o'clock at night, and if it had been life-threatening, she would have told me so. I knew her well enough, but she didn't. So the next day on the way back on I-5, I call my friend June and say, is everything okay? What's this all about? And she said, you're not going to believe what just happened. And I said, what? And she said, well, my friend Lisa just called me and said that Richard Twiss and Randy Woodley are going to be on your island in 2 days at a beach retreat house working on their dissertations. And my friend said that she thinks that Ray and Sue should host them, show them around, take them out to a restaurant and so on. Would I be willing to do that? Of course, we said yes. So 2 days later, we were sitting at a Chinese restaurant with Richard and Randy, getting to know one another, had a good time, great meal, and getting ready to leave. I said, oh, by the way, your professor said that we should volunteer to help with your staff conference in Seattle. And Richard shook his head and he said, it's not in Seattle, it's right here, 3 miles from our house. And that's where we met all of the Wachoni staff people, including Casey and Laura, for the first time. So that's how that happened. And that is right when we began working as volunteers. We put in the paperwork and so on to work as volunteers with Wachoni in 2009. We worked in a variety of ways. And then we also, the next year, Richard invited us to, oh my goodness, I'm just looking at an Alaska cruise ship going by. We can see the ferry from here. Oh my. Anyway, I now need to get back on track. Then we started working as volunteers for NATES in 2010. So we've done that a few times as well. So in the meantime, 2012 comes around. We've been working with them for quite a while. Richard finished his dissertation and was writing it up into a self-published version of what was then called Rescuing Theology from the Cowboys. And we went to, as we normally did, after the family camp Wachoni powwow weekend, we used to go to the Twist house for a barbecue, all the staff and volunteers afterwards. So that's where we were. And Richard had said that he was working on this book. Well, Ray has considerable editing experience. I don't, but not in the, I do, but not in the same way. I did a lot of medical tech writing, doing training programs and medical things as a nurse. So I had that experience. And I was chatting with Richard in the kitchen after the barbecue, and I said, Ray works in the library system, and he recommended Randy Woodley's book be put in the library system. I'll bet maybe the same thing could happen for yours. And Richard said, well, they don't usually do that with self-published. And I said, sometimes they do, if it's native history or something like that. So later on, as we're leaving, Richard picks up the book and his copy of the book, and he hands it to Ray and says, hey, just take a look and see what you think. Apparently he'd done that with a whole lot of professors and other people just to get some feedback. Well, Richard and Ray, for a couple of months, corresponded back and forth on various editing techniques and how he thought things should go and all this. And Richard contacted us and said, I would like you to edit my book. So that's how that happened. He chose us to work with him. Initially, it was he and Ray, but then the Lord made it very clear to me through a series of dreams, which we shared with Richard, that I was also to be actively part of that. First of all, I'm the typist. That helps. But also because Ray knows the nuts and bolts of the English language backwards and forwards. I'm a big picture person. I can say this needs to be rewritten in a more clear fashion for the audience, or this chapter should be after this chapter instead of before. I'm more of a big picture, Ray's more of a nuts and bolts. So it worked out well until I think it was about February 5th or 6th in 2013, where we got an email, a very detailed email from Richard. And we had been working back and forth with him through Dropbox. So we heard from him several times each week working on this manuscript together. And the last one email had a list of final projects as to how he wanted the book completed. And would we agree to finish it for him, which we gave our word to do and said yes. And within days, he had been stricken by that heart attack and unexpectedly walked on while at the events around the National Prayer Breakfast. Ray and I were just devastated, as were all of the rest, certainly his family much more so. But we had gotten to the point where we were brother and sister, not just friends, because we had worked together so closely. So what do you do then? We decided, Ray and I, that what we would do, now we had to get a copy of the self-published book done very quickly. And that was a very long story, so I won't get into it. But we were asked to do that by Gary Eastie because there were so many people who were going to be at the memorial who wanted a copy of it. So we got it. It wasn't complete by any stretch, but we got it to the best of our ability and worked with the publisher, or I should say the printer, on that. And then for the rest of the year through the end of 2013, Ray and I worked on it to polish the manuscript because we strongly believed that someday it would be professionally published. And we wanted to do our best to honor our word to Richard. So that's what we did until about May of 2014. We got a call from Catherine Twiss, Richard's widow and a good friend. And she said that she'd been contacted by InterVarsity Press, and they were interested in the rights to the manuscript. But she was still in the depths of grieving for the loss of her husband. And she said, I can't do it. I can't work with them because it's about a year-long process to work with them back and forth and editing and fact checking and cover artwork and on, all the details. Would you and Ray please be Richard for InterVarsity Press and work for them as if you were him? We were overwhelmed and honored. And so that is exactly what we did. So, of course, Catherine was CC'd in all the major decision-making conversations as she wished. And that is how rescuing the gospel from the cowboys happened. And that was why InterVarsity was kind enough to give us editing credit on the title page instead of on the copyright page, because of the work that we did with them. They were wonderful to work with. I will say that one of the kind things that they did was to publish it on Richard's birthday, June 6th, 2015, which I thought was really very nice of them. So what do you do after that? Well, in the midst of almost to the time where that was completed, I said that God speaks to me in dreams often. Now, not all dreams are from God, but if there's confirmation, that's another story. And I had a dream that Richard's, and it was quite detailed, but the gist is Richard asked me if we would write another book for him. And it was so powerful and intense and specific. The next morning when I woke up, I told Ray, and he said, so did I. Yeah, clearly from God. So we wondered if perhaps Richard, who was a prolific writer, had another manuscript that we were unfamiliar with and just didn't know he'd been working on. So we called Catherine and told her about our dreams. And she said she didn't know, but if he did, it would either be in his laptop documents or in the 2 18-gallon Rubbermaid tubs full of the contents of his correspondence and 13 years worth of sermons that they had just cleared out of his desk to deal with. She said, would you like me to loan them to you so that you can look through? Now, we're about 4 hours from there, but it just happened that we were going down for a Wachoni outreach at a conference, or maybe it was a powwow actually. So we said, yeah, well, we'll just pick them up and put them in the back of our car, bring them back and take a look and see what we can find. She said, sure, great. So the next week or so, maybe I think it was 2 weeks, we were down there, and she also gave us access to Richard's laptop to download the manuscripts he may have had in there. Nothing. How shall I say that this came about? We knew that this was the material that we were to use for the book that Richard was asking us to write. And because his correspondence was early on with Casey, and Casey later with Terry LeBlanc and Randy, it was like the prequel to Wachoni, or the prequel to One Church, Many Tribes. It was the beginning. You could see him. Richard was an evangelical pastor with short hair and a tie and suit, and he progressed to being a fully contextual and native man. So we got the privilege of reading all of his correspondence, a whole lot of words that he had never published before. So what turned out to be our Dreamcatching book is the story of Richard and Catherine's journey from the beginning to where Richard started out in One Church, Many Tribes, and their testimony. And the Lord made it very clear that it was also to be our story and our testimony of how Ray and I were called and then later connected with Richard and Catherine. So that story, some of the story I've just told you, is also the second part of that book. But then the Lord said, there also needs to be a passing on of the baton to the next generation, which was something Richard was very, very focused on. And so, since we had been in Native service since 2009 and actively enculturated in our local tribal communities, the second half of the book is what we have learned about Native testimony and ritual to help the next generation of practitioners. Casey was extremely helpful. He wrote the foreword to the book, and he also worked as our cultural advisor because we didn't want to make any mistakes writing about, say, a sweat lodge ceremony, because that's not how we were raised. Okay, so that happened. We worked with Casey. That's how that all came about. And then in 2018, during a devotional time, and I am getting close to the end here, although it could go on for hours because the Lord has done so much. But around 2018, I was having a prayer time, and the Lord, again, the still small voice was loud, and he said, you and Ray are in agreement as man and wife. You're married. I said, yes, Lord. He said, you're in agreement about the pro-life ministry area. And I said, yes. And I said, and then the Lord said, you are in agreement about Native American contextual ministry. I said, yes, Lord. He said very clearly, if you choose to convert to Catholicism, and you and your husband are in agreement denominationally and one in that way, I will use you two as a couple in a powerful and effective way to serve Native people. Now, that is nothing I would have come up with. That is nothing I was even looking into, really. We had been visiting around because our little evangelical church disbanded, but this was not something that was on my very staunchly academic United Presbyterian plate. And the Lord didn't say I had to. He said, if you choose. And I thought, well, if this is going to mean the salvation of many, I'm going to do it. And it's a process, as I learned. And a year later, I did indeed become confirmed as a Catholic and started to learn the ropes, get involved with the community, learn, which priests here and there are working in Native ministry locally, those kinds of things. Until last fall, when out of the blue, we got an email from someone representing the subcommittee called the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops has a subcommittee on Native boarding school accountability and healing. That's a mouthful, that it's meaningful, because right about then was when I shouldn't say discovery, the media publication of the children who were discovered at Kamloops and other schools came into the forefront of the news, and they were looking to do something about it, to make change and to help people. And would we be interested? And I kept thinking about the Lord saying, if you choose to do this, I will use you two in a powerful way to help Native people. So we said yes. And so we've been working with them ever since. And that webinar that I mentioned to Leah maybe a week ago, 2 weeks ago, more than 500 people signed up. And in fact, they had to close registration because there were too many. So we are actively involved with that, and we are honored to do so, to be in on the beginning of this, networking with the Canadians who are way ahead of us. And I have been greatly pleased to know that our group of 60 to 70 people are largely Native people, priests, nuns, etc. So they are currently reading, Richard's books, Casey's books, because they are listening. They want to know how best to make a change. So that is about where where it is until now. The only other thing I can say is I would strongly recommend, I feel what my request to people is, my voice to people is, listen for the voice of God, even if it's in an extremely unexpected way. you're right, Leah, he does lead us in very different directions. But all through the Old Testament, some of those prophets were given some really unusual requests by the Lord. So anyway, that is all I have for now. Thank you for listening.
Wow. Are we on? Wow. Thank you, Sue. Yeah, I just feel like I've been hit with a sandbag. That's just like, wow, that's not something you hear every day. And the Lord, you know, some people don't get a lot of the flashy stuff, and some people do, and that's God's business. And wow, yeah, I think I'm gonna open it up, see if anyone has any more questions on YouTube or Zoom chat or live.
Thank you, Donna. Donna just told me she was Air Force too. I said thank you.
Yes. Namar, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah. So, hey, Sue.
Hey.
Thank you. Oh, well, first of all, as always, just thank you for sharing your story. And, you know, you already know how much I love and appreciate you and Ray.
Me too.
Thank you very much. Hey, Ray, it's good to see you. All right. So great to see you. Yes. So I just wanted to throw that so the whole world can see that I love these two people. They're wonderful, very inspirational, you know. And so I wanted to ask you, you know, through this great journey of yours, what has been the hardest challenge in your transition in both ministry with natives and converting to Catholicism? Although I know that, you know, Ray has had experience in Catholicism before. So I just wanted to know what has been the most difficult challenges or the most challenging experiences in that ministry and in the new conversion to Catholicism.
Well, that one would be for me, not for Ray.
Yeah.
So thank you for asking that. I would say that the most difficult thing for me initially was the worry that my dear, precious Native friends would reject me because I know personally, not people I'm talking to right now, but we have friends who were abused as a result of the Catholic Church. And the first sexual abuse big bash that was opened up to the media was in Pittsburgh, which is where my family was from. My mother left the Catholic Church when she was 16 and never told me a good reason why. So there I was in the midst of converting, thinking, oh my, was that my family? And will I be rejected by my mostly Protestant co-workers in the ministry at the pro-life clinic, but also in Native ministry through Wichonian Nates. It did not turn out to be true. I was very much treated with respect. Now, there were people from our previous evangelical church who were another story entirely. I was rejected by some certain people for my choice. But I decided that the lives of the many were worth more than my discomfort.
And
Wait on, hang on.
And I would add that it's heartbreaking for us that there were a lot of Native Americans and Black Americans and Black natives that were actually baptized and brought up as Catholics. Richard Twist was one.
True.
Many others. And then they left the Catholic Church early or even later or whatever, because of what had happened in the past. And it's not the same Catholic Church now as it was then. And it wasn't, it was abuse. It was terrible. It was evil, etc. But a small part took place in that, in those back in those circumstances with the boarding schools, etc. Was terrible, terrible. But it's different now. For an example, is that committee that we're working on now with the American bishops for healing and reparations and reconciliation, just like the Canadians did. We're quite a few years behind the Canadians, actually, in some ways, but the Catholic Church is working very hard for reconciliation and for admission of guilt, etc., for the healing process. So it was heartbreaking at times that people like Richard Twist and others that were raised Catholic just turned it off, and he and others did not all of them denounce Christianity. They just kind of denounced Roman Catholicism, and all major denominations have had their ups and downs, and in the news recently, even the Southern Baptists have had a scandal recently. But it's now a work in progress, and I think Richard would feel different about it now than before. And things are happening. Things are going to get better. Reconciliation, admission of guilt, etc., is going on. Reparations, I hope.
Yes. Return of land has begun to happen.
Return of land is a big thing too, obviously. So anyway, let's hope and pray for the future and see what happens with the United States Bishops Conference Committee that we're on, and that we're keeping in close contact with them. We Zoom very often, and things will get better, God willing.
That's the power behind it.
I guess I can say a quick thing.
Sure.
My quick comment, what flashed into my mind was when that big, huge oil spill happened in the Gulf of Mexico and people were boycotting ExxonMobil, or who was it? Anyway, that gas company, but some people were saying, no, they need to not be shut down. They need to be going strong so they can clean it all up. And that's what I'm kind of thinking about, the Catholic Church needs to just be left to clean everything up, and they are starting to do that. So that's a good thing. Anyone else?
I've seen Amar raising his hand.
Oh, yeah. Go for it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let you know that when I was on the Rosebud Res with Richard,
yeah,
he introduced me to a lot of people there, a lot of some Sichangus and others, Lakotas.
Yeah.
Met different people, and then some of them were also formerly Catholic.
For sure.
But not anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then as such, many natives and their elders, they unfortunately endured much abuse in boarding schools and Catholic schools, some of them physical abuse, some of them sexual abuse, being called heathens,
Oh yeah.
And so forth, and being called filthy, and the list just goes on. And so, and they were all claiming to doing this in the name of Jesus, being through their Roman Catholicism. So I find it very, very encouraging to hear that the Roman Catholic Church is really taking steps towards reconciling or attempting to reconcile for those mistakes, because I don't think that it's known well enough just how heinous it really has been for many Native folks who were brought up Catholic,
Okay.
or were being accused of welcoming an evil spirit just when they were contextually dancing or singing, or playing the drum, or I should say, drumming, not playing the drum, just drumming. So
I was about to read your question essay. I don't know if you want to just say it yourself.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't. I just texted it because I had someone texted because I was driving. But yeah, I can ask it. I really appreciate your thoughts and for sharing your story. It's really, really powerful. I just had a quick question, like, and I don't really know how to ask it, and kind of a hard question to ask, but I'm interested in your perspective. And that is, how do Catholics reconcile the history of the Catholic Church and the mingling of the Roman Empire? How do you personally reconcile that? I'm just interested in your perspective, working with Native contextualization ministries specifically.
What do you mean about the Holy Roman Empire?
Yeah, I don't really understand your question, to be honest with you.
I guess just I don't really know how else to phrase it. I guess just yeah, I guess I can't really rephrase it any other way. That's the only way I can really think to
Okay.
phrase it.
The Holy Roman Empire. Well,
Go ahead.
The Holy
Hey, essay. Well, are you trying to get at like the Roman Empire co-opting Christianity as a political force, and how like after Constantine, the nature of the church changed from having to focus on following Jesus to a focus on being a political tool of empire.
Yeah, kind of that, and then how the popes and how it formed that turned into the Roman Catholic Church, and then how the state church persecuted even other Christians like the Waldensians and different ones like that. So just interested in that perspective, and what you like, how you would respond to people who kind of come with that. Yeah.
Well, the Holy Roman Empire, after Peter established the Catholic Church as the first pope, was much later that there was an actual Holy Roman Empire that in fact was very unholy in a lot of ways, and that they massacred not just in Europe or whatever, but they massacred Aztecs in the name of Jesus, et cetera, et cetera. That's that's night and day different from, you can say, it's like the Nazi Germany in the early 1930s is not the same as Germany today. That's night and day. Germany today is a democracy, and most people there condemn what happened then, just as most Catholics, or I would hope all of them, condemn what happened in North America and South America, or whatever, or during the Crusades. I mean, that's night and day, is my explanation. And as far as popes go, there were good popes, there were bad popes. There have been bad Protestant leaders, there have been good Protestant leaders. There are good Muslims, there are very bad terrorist Muslims. I don't know how else to say it, but I mean, what's happening right now is encouraging for us Christians in Canada and in the United States. But then again, all I can say is it's comparing that is like night and day.
I do have a question. I don't know how to pronounce your name, so forgive me. Is it Essay?
That's okay. It's Eshahemiya. It's a Cheyenne name, means sun road. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
If you haven't read it yet, and it sounds like you're into the deep, digging deep into the facts, and that's wonderful. Have you read Mark Charles's Unsettling Truths yet? Ray, would you grab me that book, please?
Is that the one by the Mennonites?
No.
It's a different
Mark
one?
Charles
Okay.
was one of our speakers a few weeks back. I'm going to hold it
Okay.
up so you can see it. It's about doctrine, exactly what you're asking about, doctrine of discovery and whatnot. Mark Charles and
Okay.
Sung Chong Ra, both of whom we don't know them, but we chatted by email periodically on book work. But this is it. It's Unsettling Truths by Mark Charles. This, I think, would give you a great deal more depth than we are able to do right now. This is a good book. And in fact, I probably will get a copy of it eventually, but we got this through our library system. So if you can't get it on Amazon quite yet, you might try that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for your explanation too. It was helpful. Much respect and love. Thank you guys.
You too. Bye-bye.
You got something there, Joe? I see that hand.
I hope so. Here, I'll put my hand up right there. Hey, Sue and Ray.
Hey.
I had a question for you. Is the Catholic Church in the United States, is it kind of using like the TRC recommendations for religious orders as like a template, or are they trying to like parallel?
Right now, we are gathering as much information as we can get from a variety of sources. And of course, networking with our friends in Canada, our cohorts there. We want to do, because different tribes, of course, have different, you wouldn't approach the Cheyenne like you would approach the Lakota, So right now, I would say that most Catholic people, most people in the country don't know anything about what we're talking about. They don't know about the history of the boarding schools and so on and so on.
But they're about to.
But they're about to because of the media. And I think that's a good thing because it's going to make change. What we are being asked to do right now, yes, I do know about the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. I know what you're talking about. What we are doing as our committee right now is collecting as much education as we can, thus the webinar we had a week or so ago. I was surprised at the religious sisters and priests who were just like me from Pennsylvania, who had no idea about any kind of Native history. I'm from Pennsylvania. There are no reservations in Pennsylvania. I was taught, all I can remember about Native people in my civics class was William Penn was kind to the natives and we could be proud of that. That's it. So we are now at a point where it has been so many years, fewer years in Canada, so many years since little children were in boarding schools in this country, that the people who are now, and there aren't very many nuns and priests left, let's face it, they don't know their own history. So what we are being asked, since they are the religious and the clergy and the archivists, God bless them, they are going through multiple thousands and thousands of records that are handwritten because of the time, trying to digitalize, because they want to do it well and give the children to who they belong to, but they have asked us for educational resources, webinars, so that one recent one we had, and I can say this because it's in the past, was on Manifest Destiny. And, what was it? They didn't know. So I hear what you're saying, but right now we're gathering resources so that we can do our best. And the ultimate goal is to change how priests and religious and lay people who are in ministry are taught in seminaries. We've been told this.
And the key word in TRC is truth.
Amen.
So we're we want to get the truth out. And once the truth is out, it's there. Some might try to bury it, but I don't think God's going to let that happen. The truth, once it's out, like, Shakespeare said, murder will out. Eventually, the murderer will be caught, whether it's 1 year or 50 years, or they go to hell. Murder will out. The truth, once it's out, is out. And no matter what any kind of politicians might say about, these are not the facts, these are the wrong facts or whatever. No, once the truth is there, and that's one of the big emphasis we have right now, is the truth, to get it out there. And once it's out, there it is. And it's trickling out. It'll be there in its totality soon.
Just so you have reference, I spent 10 years on Keeper Island, Keeper Island Residential School, in the San Juan Islands there.
Oh,
so okay. Or Penellicut would be the real name.
I didn't know there was a residential school in the San Juans.
I didn't either.
It's on the Canadian side, so it's
okay.
It's not on the San Juans. It's it's off Vancouver Island.
Okay.
Yeah,
we know.
I know about Chemawa in Oregon.
Yeah, we know Vancouver Island, but and we knew there was some there too. A friend of ours, Cheryl Bear, lives on Vancouver Island, and she's an elder with the, what's her tribe?
Nuchalnuth. I may have totally messed that up.
Tell me again.
Nuchalnuth.
Carrier?
Yes.
Yeah, she's from the interior. Yeah.
Yeah. Carrier Nation.
Yes, that's right.
Yes, yes. Okay, well, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think one of the things people misunderstand the most is that there's always more than one side or one story that is the truth. And there's always variations of the truth. And so when I talk to churches and tell them about boarding schools, or when I've taught boarding schools in my English composition classes, and people have had no idea about any of it, they go through a grieving process. At first they become angry. How come nobody ever told me about this? Why am I just hearing about this now? In many of the churches that I've spoken to, I've had people who have come up to me and were in their 80s, and they say to me, "You're the first Native American person I've ever met." And so there are so many different obstacles. They probably met Native American people, but they just don't know, because they expect them to look a certain way, like the Hollywood Indian and so on, or to hear drums or flutes or something, I was just at a powwow this weekend and talking to someone about Native American history and Christianity and boarding schools and truth and the research that I do. And normally the very first thing that non-Native people will mention is John Wayne. Oh yeah, from John Wayne, and completely forgetting that he's a movie character. They talk of him as if he's a real person. If he's the person that he plays in the films. And so that is such a clear indication of how there's more than one side to the story, and it almost makes me laugh sometimes, and sometimes it makes me deeply sad, because people will take on what a film character's version of the truth is and think that that's the way things are. But I don't know if there are people in other countries that do that, or if it's just the United States that has, the A+ in that, because it seems to happen consistently. But I did some research with the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition for about 8 months. And there's so much work to do. You know, there's history, there's records, there's archives. Ray and Sue, you probably know, and there's bits and pieces all over the place.
Oh my.
You know, if everything were just in one file, that would be wonderful, but that's really not how it happened to work out. And then with COVID, you know, there are some repositories where things have closed down, or sometimes the whole collections have been moved, and then there's a lag in time between the moving and the unpacking and digitizing and everything. So it's a long road. It's a hopeful road, but it's a slow road. And even though the Catholic Church is taking some steps, there's still so much to be done. There's my mom, who, when I took the First Nations version of the Bible over the last time I went to visit her, she still wanted absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with it. Nothing. Didn't want to look at it, didn't want to hold it. I said, I could read it to you. Absolutely not. And there are many, 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 many more like her. She's not the only one, and we would be fooling ourselves if we thought so. So, and that's where interceding and prayer and all these things can happen, or can be extremely helpful along the way, because praying for a soft and forgiving heart, no matter where that heart comes from, no matter what they walked through, it's such a simple, faithful act to do, and anybody can do it, you know, and it can really open a lot of doors that way. And then just one thing, I admire your willingness to do the editing work. I do editing work, and I totally and completely love it. And sometimes it makes me pull my hair out. So editing a manuscript, such as you've done with Richard's, after he walked on into the spirit world, is a huge task. Because even when the person is there to consult with, it's always like, am I seeing this the right way? Am I remaining true to the voice of the writer or the researcher? So all of my admiration goes out to you for the work that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me add really quickly, I met John Wayne once, and he was really John Wayne. He was a real person. And actually, he was married 3 different times to indigenous women.
Anyway, thank you, Kimberly. We appreciate your work too. I've noticed in the chat periodically during Good Medicine Way what you're working on. And I'm pretty sure that we met at Nate's symposium at one point in the past. I think so. I could be mistaken. But anyway, we appreciate what you're doing very much as well. And thank you for your insights into the difficulty of editing without Richard present. It was extremely challenging, but very much worthwhile.
Well, he was there.
Yes. I believe that ancestors watch over, and we had so many conversations, thank God, at Nate's or at Wachoni or through the computer or whatever, that we had a very good sense towards the end at what he sent us his last wishes as to how the manuscript was to be completed. So we knew, thank God, a mere days before he passed on. It was amazing. Anyway, thank you. We appreciate you.
Kind of drawing some connections between a lot of the things that have been brought up. Eshe talked about, the history of the Catholic Church, and I think that gets into the history of colonizing, which when you work in contextual ministry, you're always kind of wrestling with that history, because, that's a big barrier. The truth gets convoluted by that false narrative, because it's such a strong false narrative. And how Kimberly was talking about how most people in the status quo church are really blissfully ignorant of the history. So again, the truth gets convoluted because there's this very intentional myth of exceptionalism that goes through like the modern church. So when you're stuck in between those two things, trying to speak for truth and trying to reach people's hearts with the authentic love of Creator, just like in your own practical experience, like what are ways that you've found to be effective in bridging those gaps, or like what things have you found like that don't work, and like, you know, like, yeah, this is usually not a good path to go down, you know, but here's a way that we found that was really impactful for some people.
You want to go first or shall I? Okay, I'll go first. Thanks. Those are very good questions. I'm going to talk about Richard Twiss again. We learned from him, and I would say strongly from Randy Woodley and from Casey, those three, how to do contextual relationship building and ministry. We dove in and heard what they said about it, meaning you had to work on relationships. That was their mantra, really, truly. That is how you reach people. And there were friendships that we cultivated. You have somebody, you know, you meet them for dinner. Yeah, you go to the Chinese buffet with them. You march with them. And this was a huge in for us because we are both veterans. We made an effort to be at every grand entry we could be, secular or Christian, and march with the veterans, and then start up conversations with them. We have got some very dear friends that we made in that way. And once you are, I would say, because we are white people, obviously, I would say that some of those friendships have taken at least a year's cultivation. To be realistic, I think that is how long it has taken for there to be trust, to consistently. I've heard even one of my friends, one of those friends, long-term friends now, say to me, I said, oh, I had to go over there and, you know, get cookies to this particular group at a festival. And he said, I was watching everything you did. And they still are. They are watching everything that we did. So be consistent be kind, be consistent. I often suggest evangelism by baked goods. Double chocolate Ghirardelli brownies go a very long way towards relationship. And I'm not kidding. But also learning about the local, in our case, the Pacific Northwest cultures. So I can talk to somebody and know something about their rituals. Also, it's extremely helpful if you have the opportunity to become friends with elders, because they are often a way into further relationship with the tribal groups. And it's the right thing to do. Does that answer your question? And if so, I'm going to pass it to Ray. Did you have anything?
Well, yeah, just very quickly that, well, yeah, we are white people. We are mostly white people. We're not wannabe Native Americans, and some of those show up at powwows, you know, wearing the jewelry and stuff like that. Oh, the Sioux has a little bit of Delaware blood. I have some blood from Nova Scotia, the Mi'kmaq Nation on my father's side, but we were never wannabe Native Americans. And then the one last thing I wanted to say about Richard Twiss was talking about different denominations of Christianity, and Christianity only anyway. A few months before Richard passed on, he gave one of his last interviews, and somebody, Sunja Ra was interviewing him, and it's on YouTube, I believe.
Vimeo. It's on Vimeo.
Yeah. And Richard said, you know, I really don't think of myself as a Christian that much anymore. This was just a few months before he walked on. He said, I consider myself a follower of Jesus.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, just to touch on that, you know, just I don't know if you know, but Richard, he had been saying that like years ago.
Okay.
You know, like around the time when I first met him, and yeah, somewhere around that time or even before then, yeah, he had started saying follower of Jesus Christ, and he was telling me when we were on the Rosebud Res, he was talking to me about that, about how to many Native folks, and I've said this before, to many Native folks, the term Christian is like a curse word to many of them. And he
Yeah.
was telling me that many like him, Native folks who are following Jesus or following Jesus' way prefer not to be called Christian.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
True.
they like that phrase, or they like the terms follower of Jesus Christ. And so I've actually been using that more often lately. So I normally say Christian when I know that if I say follower of Jesus Christ to someone, they're not going to really understand why I'm saying that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So Richard, he's been crusading that, yeah, for quite a while.
So I think Diane had her hand up first, and then we'll go back to Kimberly after Diane.
This is might seem off topic a little bit, but Sue and Ray, as you're speaking about Richard, it sounded like he had everything so well planned as far as making sure he had you on board to publish that book. And it's like, did he know he was leaving us? Did he know he was going home? I mean, like that
we
soon?
wondered.
Huh?
We don't know, but we've wondered.
Okay, I'm not the only one thinking that then. It sounds like he had a dream or something, or the
I
Lord
don't know.
said, get your ducks in a row because I'm bringing you home.
I think that's possible, but we'll have to wait to
Wait and
ask
see.
him
Yeah.
later. That's a good point. We wondered that also,
Oh, sure.
especially since it was so soon after
Oh yeah.
he had given us his, like last instructions
Mhm.
before going or whatever. So I don't know. And we know that he had some heart problems
Yeah.
in his last few years. I don't remember him having any heart surgery or whatever, but when he was a teenager, he was in a terrible, terrible car accident that left his right arm withered and probably some other damage. But the fact that he lived a lot longer, that's fine. He lived long enough to do that. I mean, if he were still alive, he probably would have had 2 or 3 more books by now. But at least he got that one, and we finished it for him. And he was there when we finished it. I mean, he was present.
Right.
While we did finish. We knew that.
Exactly.
We knew that.
Well, I wanted to pick up where Namar was talking about using followers of the Jesus way. I find myself saying that when I'm talking to certain people and they know exactly what I'm saying. But if I say it at my home church, they look at me like I'm speaking of some sort of cult.
Yes.
And I go to a non-denominational church, but we have extremely low diversity, almost none. So I may be the one that makes the church diverse. The only one. And that's one of the reasons why I don't leave, because if I go, then nobody else is going to be there like that. But the other thing was when I first started going back to the reservation in 2004, there were, I noticed what I would consider extreme reactions to people who claim Christianity. And so there was like a spectrum to it's okay to you're completely insane or there's something completely wrong with you to be Christian and be Native. And I have seen that change even in my family over the years, but it's taken a long time for that to happen. And it is true. There was one experience that I had when I was doing the cross-cultural immersion class with Richard in 2008, when we were at Ghost Hawk Park. It was the very last day of our cross-cultural immersion class. And we were having a meal and just having a nice time and joking around. And then all of a sudden, a Native person just sort of like jumped into the middle of our circle. We were just sort of standing in a group. And he just jumped in and, you know, he just started telling us how he hated all Christians. And he didn't think that anyone who couldn't speak their own traditional language was worth listening to in any way, shape, or form. And we all stood, we were like in a semicircle and he was in front of us. We all stood there and nobody said anything. We just listened to him. And the more we listened to him, the more he spoke. And the more he spoke, the more we learned about him. You know, being raised by a single mom, him not being able to reconcile the fact that a relative had died and no one had been there to comfort that relative. And then here comes this Christian couple, not Native, and they said, "Is your relative so-and-so?" And he said, "Yes." And they told him, "We were with your relative when he was at the hospital because their calling was to go to be with people who were alone in the hospital and didn't have anyone to visit them or be with them." And oftentimes when Native people go to the hospital, sometimes their family can't be with them because they don't have a way to get there. You know, the hospital's 2 hours away. There's no gas money. There's no money to fix the car, whatever. And so for him to realize that somebody had been with his relative when he was in his dying process, totally broke him, not in a good way. I mean, not in a bad way, but in a good way. And then from there, the couple was able to give him a basket with jams and bread, homemade bread and things like that. And a relationship was established. And that's how it works. It really, I mean, that really is how it works. You know, here, like in mainstream society, I still refer to it as mainstream society. I think what they teach you is to show off how many scriptures you can recite.
Oh, yeah.
Or give, here's this pamphlet and it has all these scriptures on it. And it's just like, there's nothing about that says you're interested in knowing who I am as a person, what has happened to me, or anything like that. So I'm hoping one day that will change radically. So, but it's very interesting what you're saying, Sue, about building that relationship. And it takes a long time.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to spend the time and be consistent and understand that people are watching you all the time, they want to see if your words match up with your actions, then, what are you really doing if you're not willing to do that?
Yeah, Richard used to talk about the drive-by missions, where the so-called white, the nearby churches would send out their so-called missionary Bible kids or whatever to the res, to the local res, and leave them with Bibles and Walkmans as a gift, and other things too. And then as they were driving away, he said the young teenagers would wave at them and say, "Yeah, thanks a lot, you blankety blanks."
Yeah, I think when he was teaching us, he said it was called mission season.
Oh,
Yeah.
in the summertime. He said the rosebud, refer to it as mischief season. There's like 500 people a week from different churches that come during the summertime, and they don't know how to act properly. When we were up at Wounded Knee, there was a native person there at the bottom of the hill who was talking to the busloads that would come in and say, you are going into a cemetery. Please don't throw your candy wrappers on the ground. Please don't walk all over the graves, all kinds of things like that. Quite challenging for our native people, what they have to go through sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just really quickly anyway, we were just happy that the last time we both saw Richard, he gave us both very long hugs.
true.
And then at his house, and then we left, and we didn't know that was the last time, but we got those hugs anyway.
I'm going to just jump in here and say a couple more things that were part of Diane's questions. Yes. If you're feeling led to work with a certain people group or tribe, I also recommend that one thing that has helped us is going to their tribal nation website and reading their own history from their own perspective, rather than asking somebody else. That has also been very helpful for us.
All right, we got a couple hands up. I'm not sure what order they came in, but Lisa, why don't you go ahead, and then after Lisa, we'll go back to Eshe.
Thank you, Ray and Kimberly. I just so appreciate your comments. I wanted to let you know, I was actually afraid to get on here, but now I'll just tell it. My mother's Jewish. My father was part of a Anglo church, and very young I was brought on the reservation because they were supposedly doing missionary work. But that was all okay until I fell in love with someone who was Chippewa at 14 years old, and all of a sudden things began to change in my family. And I know that some of you can relate, and they didn't want me going there, but I found that the more that I went, the more I wanted to go. Well, obviously, because I loved him, but I also loved Jesus. And I saw him in a different light when I was on the res than I did when I was in the church where I grew up. And it changed my heart. And today I call him the Great Spirit, because that's what was brought into me. It's been brought into all of us in our skin. Doesn't matter what skin we were in. It came from our great creator. And I want to bring that spirit out to everyone I can, and on the reservation or not on the reservation, but just have the love of God, the pure love of God. And I really did feel that on the reservation. I knew that the people suffered a lot. I couldn't imagine in ways how, but I knew that they had a love for me and I had a love for them. And, you know, God is still moving, and I know that he's going to do great things among the people of God, despite those many atrocities. And humans, we're going to do our best to correct them, but only the Lord could put it in our heart to forgive each other and move forward. And I know, I feel it. I feel when I come here, I feel good. So that's why it's good medicine. I'm going to keep coming and taking my medicine here. So thank you, everybody. And thank you, Sue. I really enjoyed so much of what you said, and I can't reiterate it all, but I loved it.
Well, thank you, Lisa.
Thanks for talking too.
Yes.
All right, Eshe, that goes to you then.
figure out my buttons here. um, I'm just I wanted to just add to that. You know, I remember I have a Hunka family on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and it was during like when COVID was first starting, and I knew that Pine Ridge was going to be especially hit, and a lot of our communities were especially hit by COVID. And there's a community there, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with it, called oh man, it's gonna slip my mouth. Oh, there it is, Red Shirt near Red Shirt Table on Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And I sell books. I sell health and spiritual books for a living. And I had some books on like how to reverse type 2 diabetes, little booklets, little small ones. And then just a few tracks on the love of God and Express the Messiah in there too. Really relevant and just practical. And then I had food. I had food with me. I had like a bunch, I think it was that right after income tax season. So I had like $1,500 just to spend towards food. And then I had a few donations that I had from other people to contribute as well. And I can tell you the truth, not one person turned down, and it was all health. It was like lentils, and I think there was whole wheat flour and just things that people could use, you know, in their individual lives, in their homes. And not one person turned down that food, and not one person turned down those books. And I was like, I remember one person came to the door when I knocked and was like, "Who are you with? Who are you representing?" And I just said, I'm just here, just helping, just just here to help, you know, and no agenda, just to love, and that's my agenda, just to love and just to be a blessing and be where Creator wants me to be a blessing to others, and share His good news in that context. So thankful for this group, thankful for all of you. Just really thankful to be here. Blessings to you guys.
Thank you for your
share
work.
that.
Okay, one more thing. Honoring gifts are huge. I'm a painter. I've done paintings of eagle feathers. If you're going to I always have a few honoring gifts that are culturally appropriate for that tribe in my bag when we go to powwows or whatever. And as the Holy Spirit leads, that has also been a huge introduction to people. And we have friends who are storytellers, and in their tradition, Ray will often give them a pack of tobacco as a thank you. So again, it depends on the tribe, but protocol is extremely important in making relationships as well.
That reminds me of kind of everything we're talking about. It reminds me of this kind of funny story. One of the first times I was out on the Navajo Res for an extended length of time, and when we were out there for a few months at this point, and a friend of mine, Harold Nesbegay, who's spoken here at Good Medicine Way, is a native artist, and after I was there a couple months, I met his aunt and some of his other family, and his aunt told me that, like, when I was getting ready to come down, like Harold had told her that I was coming down, and that I was an okay guy, and that she shouldn't be too hard on me and whatever, and so but when I first came down there, like within the first couple days, they were having some big cookout kind of potluck sort of thing, and I remember she told me, she was like, yeah, Harold told me you were coming down, but we get a lot of you church folks from the city, so he said you're okay, but I didn't know what to think. And then when you came in and he pointed you out to me, and I saw your long hair, and I was thinking, So then I had my eye on you. She goes, and you walked up to that food table, and you looked at those hot dogs, and you looked at those hamburgers, and then you grabbed a piece of fried bread and a big old bowl of mutton stew. And I thought, maybe Harold's right. Maybe you're right. So I've always made it a point to like whenever people offer, especially if they offer me a meal, whatever it is, I'm eating whatever everybody's eating,
Oh, yeah.
no matter what. So yeah.
Okay.
All right. Any other last questions or comments from anybody? And thank you so much, Martells, for your time and your insight and sharing from your life experience.
It's been
All
a
right.
blessing.
All right, so I guess we will go into our closing round dance then, and then after the song, we'll have Joe send us off with a blessing. So let me get everything situated here. Lost my cursor again.
It's on the left. Green strip way on the far left.
Where do you see it? I lost
Where
it.
did it go now? Oh, wait,
there
it's
it
on the
is.
bottom line. Okay.
Right.
We need a big fluorescent
Yeah.
cursor.
Need a way to. There you go. I'm sure this looks really silly from at home, but okay. I'll place it up here. Okay, here we go.
Yes, oh,
Thanks, guys. Wow, that was a good meeting. I had two things, I think. It's actually one of my favorite memes. There's a picture of Geronimo, and it says, John Wayne, never heard of her. So that's my number one thing. Since we mentioned John Wayne, I liked what Kimberly said. I was thinking similarly, and maybe hopefully these aren't putting words in your mouth, but I think we go our separate ways into our lives as in good ways, listening, watching, and loving. And that's my second thing. So thank you. And I don't know if we're done or what, but
All right. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you all next week. Do you know offhand who's next week? Oh, well, you'll have to stay tuned to the Facebook
For the
page.
surprise. Are we
Yeah.
gonna do our little hangout a little bit, or?
I don't know, but let me stop the recording and the live stream, and then we can decide what we want to do.